All right, folks. Good evening and happy Labor Day weekend. We're not being too creative this evening with the same hat we used last time. My favorite Disney security hat. It's Professor Finn, everyone's favorite funeral service educator, and homeless mall Santa. And the homeless mall Santa vibe is strong with this one. And do you see what technology does to me? Look at all this grade that's creeping in. So the first good thing is someone just knocked at the door, and now the dogs have shot up their methamphetamines, and they're going to be barking, going crazy as I talk. So may God have mercy on their souls. The second part, really cool thing, is we got a really, really awesome program this evening. Princess is at the door trying to get in here, and that's just not going to happen. So, first thing, really big. You can see that the proton pack is up and going. I had someone ask me a question, hey, does that thing actually work? And it does have lights and sound. So what I did is I've got it jimmied with a little power cord. So going forward, we will have our unlicensed nuclear accelerator running across the back. So as we get started tonight, folks, chat is up. Please feel free to drop something in the chat. Say hi. I got some cool new things that I have been setting up with the new Mac. Let me tell you what, the new Mac Studio is working like a champ. I haven't seen anything dropped so far. It is handling everything we're doing and not even breaking a sweat. So very happy to see that. And one more thing that I'll toss out just to say and get it on the record. Converting from my 2015 iMac that I had for years and years and years and years and years to this Mac Studio was absolutely the easiest transition of any computer I have ever had. Usually I have to back it up and then I'll just start from fresh and I'll reinstall everything and go crazy. But because, I'm ridiculous and I have faith in the world, I usually try to go and start with importing all my stuff to see what makes it, what doesn't, then realize there's going to be a dumpster fire, so I just wipe it and I start from scratch again. So this time, looking to see if there was any faith in humanity, I went ahead and I imported it. And it was damn near seamless. Like, the easiest thing that I've done in a while. So, hey, I might invest in the Mac infrastructure again. We'll see how long it takes for this Mac to become obsolete. Hopefully not for another decade. But let's go ahead and get the screen shared and start talking about some cool stuff this evening. So first and foremost, I want to do a shout out to my buddy Gabe. Gabe Schaff over at Milwaukee Area Technical College, and also one of the biggies in the National Funeral Directors Association as he runs kind of their social media stuff. And dude, hell of a nice guy. Proud to call him a colleague and a friend. And this is your reminder. Get your butts in for the Funeral Face-Off 2025. You can find the information right here on the screen. If you are on Facebook, you may find my friend Gabe. You can send him a friend request, as you should, because he is cool. He could use all the friends he can get. And he'll be happy to go ahead and get you hooked up. If you need if you want to try to just type it right off the screen, the web address is right there for you. And come on, join up, show off your knowledge of funeral service and funeral service history. I do not believe this is open for professors. So if you are currently teaching in a mortuary school, you have an unfair advantage. And so poo-poo on you, you cannot do that. So cry us a river. Angela, good evening. Nice to see you as well. So folks, those of you who patronize my live stream on a fairly regular basis, one of the cool things, depending on who shows up tonight, I just got the idea today. I was able to knock out 2 of these. So what I want to do for all my hardcore folks to try to make these live streams and slap me around, I want you to all get your own intros. Okay, so do me a favor at askbigbadfinn@gmail.com or drop it in the chat what you would like your intro to be. Think of a movie that you like that would be appropriate to represent you, and let me know if there's a particular scene in that movie, and we'll try to get a little clip from that, turn it into a GIF or something, and throw it up on the screen. So when you pop up in the chat, I can throw a little heads up your way. So I've only got 2 of these. We'll see if any of those people show up tonight. If they do, absolutely, I'm going to show off what's there, but I don't want to spoil the surprise. So, next thing that's up, um, and hey, man, let me tell you how proud I am to put this up on the screen. So, the International Conference of Funeral Service Examining Boards, the sweetest smelling conference of funeral service examining boards in the world, has decided to update their board members. And they recently appointed Dr. Mark Evely at Wayne State University as the newest board member to the board of directors at the conference. I am very, very proud to see that. I'm very, very proud of him. I'm, really, really just I'm really amazed to call him a friend and to call him a peer. He was one of the first smiling faces when I first started going to the American Board Conferences back in 2013. And we've kind of stuck through it since, man. And he's just been a wonderful resource to me. The stuff that he does is inspiring. He is absolutely the 1% of mortuary science education in the United States. So just, hey, man, shout out to Dr. Evely, you kick-ass dude. And so happy to see you doing all the things that you are doing. And see you when I see you, bro. In a darker tone, I want to throw a shout out to Father Jimmy Gordon, Flash Gordon. May his soul rest in peace. So, Father Gordon was the pastor of Blessed Sacrament Catholic Church in Seminole, Florida, and I had the privilege of joining their choir and being a cantor at their church when Father Gordon was pastor. And now, when I say Father Gordon was pastor of a church, this guy was an institution at that church. I think he first arrived at the church in the 1970s, like the early 1970s. 5 years later, he was made pastor, and he was pastor up until like 2017. It's here in his obituary. I'm not going to read it. I just want to talk a little bit about Father Gordon and what a tremendous guy he is. So, if you're unfamiliar, here's the education point for the evening. You have two types of priests. Okay, you have two types of priests really in the Catholic Church. You have diocesan priests under the direct control of the bishop, and then you also have order priests, which belong to an order within the Catholic Church, and they're usually run by a head friar or a vicar. There is someone that is in charge of the order. So what is the big difference between these folks in a nutshell? Well, order priests typically take on additional vows, or they also obligate themselves to certain lifestyles. So, for instance, if you ever see a Catholic priest walking around and they have this just large brown robe on, chances are pretty good that person is a Franciscan. And Franciscans have a very certain skill set. They got the gift of gab. They are really good evangelists, but they also take a vow to wear that as a show of humility. So you would never see a diocesan priest wearing that brown robe, or if you did, that would be something relatively uncommon. But the Franciscans, that's what they do. And Father Gordon was an order priest. He was part of a order called the Institute of Charity Rosminian. So in addition to all the priestly vows, he also takes a vow of poverty. The Institute of Charity priests are basically not permitted to have, or they are permitted to have personal possessions, but at any point, those personal possessions have to be given up. So, if Father Gordon got a $5,000 laptop, and the order said, well, you need to donate that because we need that at a school, it's here you go. No ifs, ands, or buts. Really, really keeps those priests humble. And Father Gordon absolutely lived that life. Like, Father Gordon did not put any value in money whatsoever. Just amazing, amazing priest. And despite that, okay, you might think that, hey, a person that doesn't have like any connection to money might not have a good business acumen. Let me tell you what, this guy in his church, he was able to do everything he ever needed to do, grow his ministries, keep the school running. I mean, the man was just a pro at running a business, because I think a lot of people fail to see that churches are businesses too. They have expenses, they have repairs. There's lots and lots and lots of stuff that churches have to be responsible for. And man, tell you what, he did a hell of a job. So I got introduced to Father Gordon through my good friend, the director of music there at Blessed Sacrament, Fred Eschenfelder. And Father Gordon was a special type of guy. And I had a profound respect for him. And Father Gordon had a way about him. I think in modern language, you would say probably fell somewhere a little bit on the autism spectrum. Had a certain focus, had a certain way about him that was always just the way he was. And very, very sad to see that he had Parkinson's disease. The last time I saw him, I was at the church for my dad's funeral. I'd come in, I think, a couple days prior, and just happened to come in for a mass when Father Gordon was speaking, and I was sitting in the chapel listening. And I didn't know who it was. I was really like, oh, it sounds like, they have an older priest, maybe a retiree that is down from up north snowbirding or something. And he's being a guest homilist or a guest celebrant or something. And it was Father Gordon. Parkinson's really affected him. And very, very sad to see that. So I know there are people very close to him there. Father Rick Pilger was pastor of Blessed Sacrament. He recently stepped down. Now I don't know Father Bibbin's first name, and I don't want to butcher it even if I look it up. But now there's a Father Bibbin that's the pastor there. But Father Rick worked alongside Father Gordon for a very, very, very long time. Father Gordon first met Father Rick when Father Rick was in high school and thinking about, choosing the priestly life, and then was with him throughout his priestly journey up until Father Gordon's death. So it's almost like a father figure there. And hell of a nice guy. Never let the world get into the way of doing good things for people. And the world is a little bit darker now that he has passed. So God bless him. Can't imagine where I'd be without the wisdom that he imparted, and certainly the prayers he probably offered for me, because God knows a heathen like me needs all the prayers that I can get. So God bless you, buddy. Thanks for everything. I'll see you when I see you. Next up, looks like LinkedIn screwed something up, and if it's what I think it was, I really have no idea what this was supposed to be, but clearly something updated that shouldn't have, so goodbye. Independent Funeral Directors of Florida. So I've been a proud member of the Independent Funeral Directors of Florida for a considerable amount of time, probably... Man, I think I was a member of the Independents prior to me becoming a professor. So probably somewhere in the late 2000s to early 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. Certainly I became a member when I was a professor. I distinctly remember being a member at that point. So great little organization there. And they now have a mentorship. So I want to read this off so y'all can take some advantage of this. So obviously it is the Independent Funeral Directors of Florida. If you are not a Florida funeral director, probably not going to find a mentor through the IFDF. However, that being said, now that you know that the IFDF has something like this, you can reach out to your state funeral director association, shoot a holler over to your peeps and say, hey, they're doing this in Florida. And if it's good enough for Florida, man, it is good enough for your state as well. So maybe we can do something like that, and they can get a hold of Dr. Mixon down there and say, hey, what are you doing with this? How'd you set it up? They can talk, and they can do something in their own state. So calling all future and current funeral professionals in Florida. Are you studying to become a mortuary professional? Or are you a licensed funeral director looking to share your experience and expand your network? We're proud to announce a new mentorship program, a collaboration between the Independent Funeral Directors of Florida and Continuing Vision. This initiative is designed to support passionate individuals at every stage of their funeral service career, build meaningful connections, gain industry insight, grow professionally and personally. Whether you're looking to be mentored or to mentor others, this is your chance to make a lasting impact. If you have questions, if you are on LinkedIn, shoot them a message, a DM there. If you are ready to take that next step and be a mentor, there is a link there in the description. If you are watching the screen Now you can go ahead and, pause the video once the live stream ends, type that in verbatim. Or if you are listening via audio, you can always shoot a holler to the YouTube channel. Always nice to see someone tick up another view on the metrics, and go ahead and type in the form. One, if you are a funeral professional, you need to be involved with the next generation popping up, man. That I can't say it any other way than that. You do not have an excuse not to be a mentor. Um, am I going to mentor for the IFDF? Gonna, I'll see if they'll have me, because I'm not in Florida anymore. I really don't have a way to sit down and talk, other than long distance. But I certainly mentor for the American board. Like, I want to mentor funeral service educators, funeral service administrators. So I am very, very big on mentoring. When I was president of the American board, that was one of the things I wanted to see us do. That's a service that we kind of offered to the members of the American board, some level of mentorship. And I was very, very proud that was something that we were able to achieve during my presidency. And shout out to Professor Lauren Boudreau, who is the head of the ABFSE mentoring committee. She did a phenomenal job getting that thing set up. She's doing a phenomenal job supervising it now. So kudos to her. She's a rock star, and appreciate everything she does for the American board. So let's get into Brittany. Hello, good to see you this evening. Thanks for stopping by this Labor Day weekend to spend a little time with your favorite homeless mall Santa. Let's jump over to our friend over at the Funeral Director Dailies. Couple of articles I found, and then there's some really cool stuff I happened to find on the internet, because, of course, people have to do people things and try to impress each other with gross levels of stupidity. So, yeah, let's talk about it. So, will recurring revenue come to death care? I should comment, folks, that I used to have a wonderful 27-inch tablet screen made by a company called Canvas, Kamvas. It was a pen tablet monitor combo, and the digitizer died, so I couldn't use the pen anymore. So I swapped it out for a little, like, 13-inch tablet I got from a surplus place. So I'm trying to read off of a relatively small screen. So if you're wondering why, hey, the text is so big on the screen, it's because the screen here is very small, and I had to blow it up to something like 180% in order for me to be able to see it. It's a staple fact that death only occurs once for each human being. Nope. There's a couple times people get jump-started and they go through that route 2 or 3 times. Sometimes they pull through, sometimes they don't. So from a technical from a technical aspect, you might die once, or you might die a couple of times, with the last time being the charm. And in the business world of death care, that's a fact we have to live with. A recurring or repeat client is defined by a returning family, not by repeat business of one individual. Until the rapture, and then we'll see how that goes. No refunds. Does that mean recurring revenue will never come to death care? First, let's define recurring revenue as defined by Gemini Artificial Intelligence. What? Siri's not good for you? Gotta be Gemini. Recurring revenue is a business model where companies earn predictable income from ongoing customer payments for subscriptions, memberships, or usage-based services over scheduled intervals, rather than from one-time sales. This model provides greater revenue predictability and stability, allowing for more accurate financial forecasting and growth planning, and is often measured using metrics like monthly recurring revenue, MRR, and annual recurring revenue, ARR. Pretty much everything today, folks, has gone to a recurring revenue type of model. Think about it. If you have an Android phone or an iOS device, you're likely paying for a recurring revenue for some extra storage. If you have an Xbox, or you have a Switch, or if you have a PlayStation, you're probably paying for one of the network fees for them. My big thing is Xbox. That's the platform that I use. I've got that platinum Xbox Live membership that hits me every month or every other month at $60. And what do I get for that? Well, I get a bunch of free crap through the Xbox Game Pass, and Xbox gets to know that I'm just going to stay a member because, I get basically free stuff every month. It would be the cost of one video game if I went to go buy it. So this has been a pretty attractive model. If you buy anything for your phone, you might be on a subscription. drives me nuts because I'm a one-time pay for it, that's it, I don't need to pay for this again type of guy. So things like Adobe Creative Cloud, where you can't even buy it anymore, you can only buy an annual license and then it self-renews, that kind of drives me nuts. There are items that come to mind rather quickly that are mature forms of monthly recurring revenue, such as insurance payments, credit card interest. Nah, don't pay credit card interest, folks. Try to keep that credit card usage to a minimum, pay that crap off at the end of every month, and you'll thank Professor Finn for it. And fitness club memberships. Clearly, they didn't talk to this fat guy because I ain't got no fitness club memberships. And there are those companies that found a way to do recurring revenue in their line of business and reaped incredible benefits and profits from doing so. Two of the latter that come to mind are Netflix and Microsoft. Oh, look at that. I have both of those, actually. If you go back a decade or so before streaming, there was this video or CD rental stores. You would rent a video or CD movie for a set fee for the night. I was there, Gandalf. I was there at the turn of the age. Upstart Netflix competed by offering these videos or CDs by mail for a flat monthly fee. For that fee, you could access as many movies as you would like. I had a Netflix subscription back then, and I absolutely would get as many movies as I could get. And what I would do is I'd get them, I'd rip the movie, and I'd send it back. So rather than going out and buying DVDs, I would just use Netflix to send me the crap, and as soon as I get it, I'd rip it, I'd send it back, and then just keep on going until I built up a really, really nice library. For back in the day, if you're into Japanimation or something like that, anime as it's called now, Netflix was a bargain for that because something would come out, you wouldn't have to pay 80 or 90 bucks for a DVD set or something. You could just get the discs, and then you could rip it and you'd have the series. Breaking all sorts of laws and copyright crap and stuff like that. But hey, man, when you're like, late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, you don't care about stuff like that until you go to prison. And Microsoft, they moved from being paid a set fee by the computer company for each computer sold with Microsoft software installed as a subscription service, where the purchaser paid an annual recurring fee for the use of Microsoft products via online installation. Still hate online installation. I should not have to get your okay to install the crap that I bought. I'll get off my soapbox eventually. Both Netflix and Microsoft profited handsomely and still continue recurring revenue methods for sales. Even in the world of writing this newsletter blog, I need to subscribe to 2 monthly recurring revenue companies in order to allow for photo images, iStock, and distribute the newsletter, MailChimp. Yeah. I think that Netflix and Microsoft both realize you can gain more revenue over time than you can for a one-time purchase, and there are a lot of other advantages of MRR, such as raising fees or adding amenities for a price that are easier to do in small monthly increments than in a one-time, larger cost application. So the question should be asked in death care: can a funeral home or cremation provider gain more revenue over time than they can for a one-time services and merchandise purchase at the time of death? In funeral service, there are funeral home software as a service, or a SaaS, SaaS. You're going to see that acronym a lot when you work with IT products. Everyone wants to offer a software as a service or software as a subscription. It's always something like that. Provides to provide their services to funeral homes and cremation operators on a monthly recurring model. However, outside of pre-need insurance premiums, I'm not aware of any of their MRR methods that traditional funeral homes and cremation providers offer to retail consumers. Probably because that is a hard product for the funeral home. Now, if you have something like a cemetery, you can probably get something like that for those fun little videos that pop up. I've seen some markers that have embedded like LED screens. We now have individuals who are producing products that offer augmented reality, so they can walk up to a grave, kind of scan the QR code with the phone. All of a sudden, it pops up with some information. That's something that can happen there. You'd have to build something like that into your funeral home in order to get something like that. So you'd really have to rack your brain to see what is it that we can provide that would be something as a service. I know off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything. I also think that funeral homes that can figure out a way to offer their services on an MRR model will reap great benefits when doing so. But the only service that I can think of that would work in that fashion is some type of grief, bereavement, or mental health benefit. Yeah. There are suppliers that offer such, and many funeral homes offer them free of charge for a time period post-funeral. How about figuring out a way to offer this type of service on a monthly recurring revenue model going forward? Would families subscribe to it? Are there other services that a funeral home could piggyback off of, such as estate services that would consolidate a group of benefits consumers would pay monthly for? I challenge you to think of the opportunities. Now, that's a good idea right there. That you try to partner with, say, your local bar association, get some attorneys there that do estate planning or whatever, and for a subscription fee, they get, I don't know, 10 free hours a year with the attorney, and then you get a cut of that because you're setting them up through the funeral home. So there'd be ways to partner with that. Promise you at some point the attorneys will try to screw you out of that so they can get the full amount. But that could certainly be something that you could do. So in the legal word, that can probably be attributed to something like ARAG. So there's Legal Shield, ARAG Legal Services, a couple of other things out there where you can either through your employer as part of a benefits package, or you can purchase separately outside of that a subscription where you get X number of legal services per year at no charge, just for your basic subscription fee. I can tell you that I used something like that for a gun trust I wanted to create. Didn't need to get anything fancy. I already pay for this ridiculous thing through work as a payroll deduction. And when I was looking at the services they offer, well, they offered free gun trust. They are like 3 hours of an attorney towards a gun trust, which, dude, you can write it in less than 3 hours because you're just going to use the same damn one you've been using, and you're going to swap my name out for the other chucklehead, and you're going to copy and paste, my serial numbers and whatnot and descriptions into the trust, and it's done. So certainly that is less than 3 hours of work, unless you're trying to engrave this on like granite. Well, the company outside of the realm of funeral service offers some type of MRR model for funeral or cremation services. I can envision an insurer of supplemental insurance coverage, such as Aflac, offering a pre-need direct cremation option upon death for a certain fee per month. Yeah, they could probably try to get away with that, and then probably regulatory commission would jump all over their bacon because of the fact that that would be considered soliciting pre-need services. Now, I would think an insurance company would be able to push back pretty hard against that, and that would fall into the whole membership thing, right? So there's a cremation provider out there that I won't mention, National Cremation Society, who offers memberships to its people. And in the state of Florida, the Consumer Restitution Fund does not cover memberships. So if NCS folded tomorrow, there is no way that a person that has a membership with NCS is going to be able to get that money back from them. So that's one of the dangers of something like that. You really want to measure the risk on something like that. And hell, if Aflac wants to partner with local funeral director associations or regulatory agencies to put something like that together that could be backed up, that might be a pretty good deal. In any regard, monthly recurring revenue charges are here. I challenge you to see how many you have. Cell phone, yeah. Gym membership, funny. Streaming services, yeah. Internet services, yeah. I mean, dude, can you imagine not having the internet in today's day and age? Like, people who live like van life have to have internet hookup because that's their connection to the world. I'll tell you what, though, movie passes. I just got one of those AMC accounts where I can see X number of movies per week. And I'm absolutely using that to its extent. It's a great little thing if you like going to the movies and if you are going to go all the time. I think the only way that movie theaters are going to be able to stay alive is through things like that, just because of the fact that, hey, you're going to get a free ticket, so to speak, even if they don't go to the movies for whatever reasons. My problem is I'm that much of a jerk that as soon as I subscribe to something like that, I go right into the settings and I turn off auto-renew. 100% of the time. I immediately turn it off so I know when it gets to the end of the year, it's going to shut off. I'll get the reminder. If I want it again, I'll rebuy it. If I don't, I simply won't. And you're damn well not going to hit me for another fee just because of the fact that, I forgot you exist. Google's actually doing a pretty good job, and I'm sure Apple's not too far behind, of letting you know that some of these things are coming up when you have these subscriptions so that you can get the heck out of them and not get burned. Funeral homes, evolution thins the herd. I saw that and I'm like, hey, here we go. Fresh off the new Jurassic Park model. Talking about thinning the herd. You know what, folks? It's time for the hat to go away. It keeps sliding down. Probably need to put like a little non-skid thing right there. Businesses commission research studies when there are unexplained difficulties with the business. Primarily, business is down and we don't know why. Well, for us, people ain't dying. Over 4 decades, funeral businesses commissioned hundreds of studies to explain the causes of declining business. During the 1980s and 90s, many of the funeral businesses in the New York City metro area experienced declining volume as retirees began leaving the city following retirement. Yeah, people with a brain probably, and you might say, well, you're being awful combative. Dude, if you have a brain, you probably don't want to live in New York City. Like, the rents are stupid expensive. I just do not understand why people would want to pay like $5,000 or $6,000 a month for like a 300 square foot efficiency. Like, I just don't get that. That is crazy stuff to me. And obviously, people who leave New York because of the quote unquote higher rate of pay, that's going to go a lot further in another state when you retire. So obviously, if the people are leaving the state to die, you're not going to get any funeral home revenue. The migration wasn't immediately obvious, which caused operators being questioning their business. Over time, many funeral businesses closed or sold for property value. They transferred pre-needs, family files, phone numbers, and business names to larger remaining firms. Facilities, pricing, and staff members also caused declining at need volume. For the most common cause of decline was insufficient advertising. Research respondents indicated reputation, not familiar with the firm, or know nothing about this business as reasons not to select a funeral home. In other words, insufficient communication with the public. This article was done by Glenn Gould. I guess that's what that little bubble there is about. Glenn is a cornerstone in the industry. We'll just leave it at that and continue. There were reported 22,000 funeral homes in the 1960s and 70s, most conducting fewer than 150 cases annually. That's a comfortable number. Most firms served a specific neighborhood, church, religious, or ethnic group. Yeah, I mean, the funeral home that I worked for, Reese Funeral Home in Seminole, Florida, one of our big clients was my church. There was a lot of us that were connected in that funeral home to that church. So that's one of the things that funeral homes kind of try to do, is they try to link with churches in their area and offer services to those either parishioners or members, depending on what denomination of church you are. As such, advertising other than sponsorships, church bulletin, public relations, all that was necessary was to maintain an ongoing business. True. As cremation became more popular through the 1980s and 90s, funeral businesses needed to serve larger geographic and demographic areas, which was accomplished with elevated advertising and marketing. Those that refused to accept the new reality experienced declining business. Advertising during that period was primarily in print, i.e. newspapers, yellow pages. Dude, I'm willing to bet that probably most of the people that listen to this don't know what yellow pages are. Radio and direct mail. Radio advertising never had much impact save obituaries on the air, advertising in rural areas. I remember seeing Mr. Reese's ads in the movie theaters. So before a movie would play, they used to show like ads for local business. You could buy time on the big screen. I remember seeing some of this stuff in those local theaters, which was smart because the theater that I saw the most ads on was like this really crappy dollar theater that was right next door to one of the largest assisted living facilities in that county, in that specific area. So all the folks would pile into the ALF van. They would drive basically just across the street, and they'd be right there for the dollar movies. Hey, go get your pre-need done. The only thing that would be better is if you literally sat at a table right next to the popcorn stand and handed out business cards as people are eating their popcorn. Go ahead and keep eating that popcorn. You want extra butter on that. I can already feel the arteries hardening. Have a card. Firms first to adapt to television advertising experienced accelerated growth, taking business from firms that failed to communicate. The cost of cable and broadcast advertising grew advertising budgets, but the results were impossible to measure, which made advertising a leap of faith. Well, early on, probably, but one of the things that even in the business that I'm leading now, when we talk about advertising, there is some way that I am able to see if that is being effective. Like, I'm really blessed to have an awesome team at the business that I lead, and our chief information officer. If I need something tracked via internet or whatever, it's done. Just, what are you putting? Here's how we can do it. Pick one of the methods. Bam, done. And same thing would go for any sort of TV or radio or whatever. I would have something in there so when someone says, hey, mention this code or whatever, there's a reason why you put that into the ad so it can be tracked so that you're not just hemorrhaging money. I remember Mr. Reese for like 15, 16 years had a billboard right above Seminole United Methodist Church that had his funeral home ad on. I mean, it was there nonstop. No one ever had anything else. One day I was driving in, the ad had changed. And I think Mr. Reese told me it cost him something like $7,000 a month for that billboard. So after X number of years of doing that, like more than a decade, he just stopped doing it just to see what impact it would have on his call volume. And it had damn near nothing for like 6 or 7 months. And then as his call volume began to decline, obviously you start thinking, well, what's happening? Did the removal of that ad have an impact on my business? But then when you look across the board at the county, you can see that everyone's numbers were declining. Well, that tells you it's probably not your billboard. The greatest competitive advantage of digital advertising is the ability to measure results. 100%. Results from pay per clip. I think it meant pay per click. Social media advertising, over-the-top television, and geofencing enable the client to identify productive advertising. If you don't know what geofencing is, check that out, man. That's the world is a crazy place these days. We've talked about whatchamacallit, geographical pricing or GPS pricing. So what ends up happening is if you're at home and you go onto a store's app, it'll give you a price. If you drive to the store and you're in the parking lot, it may give you a different price. If you're in the store, it may give you even a different price. Target's one of the biggest offenders for that crap. It used to drive me nuts. I'd see something on the app, I'd go into the store to buy it, and I'd ring it up and it would be like, full price instead of like 20 or 30% off, whatever I went there for. Obviously, I was trying to get a discount. So I'd be like, dude, that's the wrong price for this. Oh, no, that's the right price. Well, on your app, it says it's like, 50% off. Oh, well, you have to buy it through the app. Really? The fat man got into the car, drove to your place of business, waddled into Target, got the thing that he came to get, and you're going to charge me full price because I opted not to buy it in your app. That's just downright stupid. STOOPID, stupid. And I can tell you, I walked out of Target without a product at least twice because they would not extend the same price in stores they did on the app. I believe now they will honor the online price. But it's crazy how if you're in the car, it's one price. You walk into the store, it's something else. Like, that's nutty stuff. That's why I've been long saying, yo, FTC, you want to do something meaningful? Stop that crap. This has caused advertising budgets to grow even while the marketing costs have declined as unproductive advertising is discontinued. Digital advertising has eliminated the need for market research as consumers effectively communicate what they like and dislike about various competitive firms by the selections they make. Looking at you, Yelp. Competitors can view each other's ads to identify more successful messages. So why do so few funeral homes effectively use digital marketing? Even more to the point, why do they continue investing in print advertising? After all, the fact that the daily newspaper is down to once or twice weekly indicates declining readership. I can name I saw an article today that after 150 years, a Georgia newspaper is ceasing print production. They're going to go completely digital. Writing on the wall, man. The combination of cremation and digital marketing also challenge the logic of branch facilities in the same market. The threat of being a primarily cremation business with too much overhead should cause owners to question the logic of acquisitions that add addresses but fail to create sufficient profits. Just as in the 1980s through the 2000s, cremation is causing funeral facilities to sell for property values while selling pre-needs and family files to larger firms. Many of the expenses borne by funeral businesses in the past are now superfluous. That's a cool word. Haven't seen that in a while. Which has created opportunities for investors to open mortuary service businesses. Providing first call, embalming, cremation, drivers and vehicles on an as-needed basis, IR speak good right now, reduces overhead costs while making more productive use of the declining number of licensed directors and embalmers. Again, just as in the past, firms that fail to adapt to the changing environment will suffer losses, causing more firms to sell for property value and continued growth of larger firms. And what do the larger firms say about something like that? And then the rest is about Glenn Gould. So good for him. I remember reading one of his books, required reading in mortuary school. You know what? We're going to pass on the down and out operator one. What is the average size funeral home in the United States? Again, folks, if you're just joining in, if you got questions, you want to say hi, drop something in the chat, and I promise I will see it at some point. Every so often when I'm researching for articles, I stumble across something that really fascinates me. Well, it happened last week, and I enjoyed using the information to decipher what the average size of a funeral home was in the United States, according to data compiled in 2023, which means that most of that data is from 2022. I came across this listing of data for state compilation of funeral homes and cemeteries that was derived from the United States Department of Commerce, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the IBIS World Industry Reports. If you don't know about IBIS World, they are a global research firm whose website states that their analysts leverage economic, demographic, and market data, then add analytical and forward-looking insight to help organizations of all types make better business decisions. Okay. I learned of IBIS World during my time on the board of directors for the University of Minnesota and spent time at the university's Carlson School of Management, which had a subscription for students and faculty and board members to use. Dude, board members get the free research stuff? Yo, some school looking for a fat guy that looks like a Santa Claus? I'm available. I want free research tools. They are fascinating documents, and I enjoy dissecting the funeral, cremation, and cemetery editions every year. Okay, I got to do something about that. According to the data from those sets of documents, a total economic impact of funeral services, cemeteries, and cremations could be estimated for the United States. The data suggested that for 2022, the United States had 15,703 funeral homes. 106,188 people were employed by those funeral homes. 76.2% of the funeral homes were family or privately owned. Christ almighty, probably not anymore. Funeral homes generated a total revenue of $16.96 billion in the United States. Dude, that ain't squat compared to some other big industries. Like, that's drop in the bucket coffee cup stuff. Cemeteries generate $4.250 billion in the United States, and from those numbers, an average revenue per funeral home can be established. That number would be basically 1.1 million per funeral home. So let that sink in, young entrepreneurs out there. If you start a business and you are even remotely successful and can hit the average, your business is making $1 million a year. Not bad. Not bad at all, being your own boss, making cash. So, by revenue, the average size funeral home in the United States in 2022 would be just over $1 million in revenue. If one would add the average inflation rate of 2023 and 2024 to that number, we're looking at basically 1.09 mil in revenue. The statistics provided allow us to do this for each and every state. I simply took the revenue number listed and divided by the number of funeral homes in that state to get an average size. Here are some of my findings for average size per state. Minnesota, 937,000. Texas, 1.1 mil. Vermont, 675,000. Damn, Vermont, what are you doing up there, kids? And California, 1.4 million per funeral home. You know what's great about that? Just forgot to put this on mute. That would be awful if it went off. 1.4 million, and they're probably taxing you at like 40%. So, just because you make 1.4 don't mean you take home 1.4. I would love to see what that breakdown in California is. Professor Finn, why do you have to keep throwing shade to California? Because the taxes are a dumpster fire in that state. My God. Funeral Director Daily Take. What does Tom say? Whenever this much data is compiled, there is bound to be some that is not totally accurate. Yeah, and let's just say that like whatever the U.S. is collecting in the Department of Labor is... I mean, it's the number. Don't take me wrong. It's the number the government's providing. But you really have to dig in and go through and analyze the stuff that's in there. Like, when people want to discuss, how much compensation funeral directors should get, and they start pointing to the Department of Labor statistics, it's like, yeah, we can look at California where a funeral director probably has to make like $95,000 a year just to be at poverty line, because at 90 grand they're taking home 30 grand a year. Like those are the things we need to look at. So we really got to tear into the data. I am really surprised with Vermont. Like that's either low population or something. I would love to see why that average is so low. Because Vermont, I don't think is a cheap state. Like no one goes, "Hey, I'm gonna move to Vermont because property values are low." That's like the northeastern United States. That's like tax hell. At some point in time, I realized that I managed a larger than average funeral home, and I was able to use that to my advantage in negotiating supplier arrangements. Yeah, if you're big on the block, you're absolutely going to use that weight to push other things around. 100%. That's just business. I found that it just made sense that if my funeral home could provide more casket sales to a supplier, more pre-need insurance policies to ensure I was more valuable to those suppliers than smaller firms. 100%. And if they want to do business with my firm, then I should get better pricing than a smaller funeral home firm if I use their products exclusively. Over the years, simply knowing where I sat in the hierarchy of funeral homes was financially beneficial to me with my suppliers, and also beneficial when it came time to sell, because I knew what firms would be interested in a firm of my particular size. I find data useful, and the more you have, the better decisions you make. 100%. People like to say, "Hey, what does a CEO do?" Largely, my job is a lot of analytics and planning, looking at data. What is the data telling me? Asking questions about the data, asking questions of people around me. What do they see in the numbers? Like, really, really, really important to be able to look at data. You can't just walk in and walk out of your job. If that's all you want to do, then heck, man, you can find a good, you'll be happy in funeral service. Like, you can do that. A guy who used to be my manager, he had no desire to run his own funeral home, yet his brother did. But if you are going to be a manager, you got to learn how to analyze data. What is the data telling you, and how are you going to use that data to improve the situation that you're in? I saw this and I was like, what's movies? Huh? What am I missing here? I believe some documentary came out on Netflix. Everyone knows the name of it. Throw it into the chat. With like The Matician or something like that. It came out and I just didn't watch it because there was like better things for me to watch on Crunchyroll or something. Another month has rolled on by, and we continue to write varied articles that let those in death care profession know what is going on around them. Yeah, I'm too busy watching Crunchyroll. Our articles vary in topic, and it is a guess from month to month which articles might be of the most interest to readers. That's why on or about the 15th of each month, Really weird attorney vibes from that statement, on or about. We generate a list of our 5 most read articles from the past 30 days. Since July 15th, the most read article dealt with the changes going on at the Foundation Partners Group, and another top articles dealt with retail or supplier transactions, the growing Funeral Women Lead organization, and another movie with death care ramification being filmed and expected to hit streaming. Okay, so this is just a compilation one. I think I covered at least one or two. I thought this was a different article. It's just I think I talked about some of these on my last live stream. So, man. Funeral Woman Lead. Yeah, these folks have been making a lot of press. They've been really just going crazy on social media and picking up a lot of speed. Good for them. Okay, just awesome. Good for them. I graduated from high school in 1976. That time period, okay, around the 200th anniversary of our nation, brought about profound thought change of women in the workplace. It was about that time, as you can see in the graphic below, that females caught and eventually passed males in college enrollment. Up until that time, young females were counseled to be nurses, not doctors, legal secretaries, not attorneys, and teachers, certainly not college presidents. I mentioned that last occupation because during my first tenure on the University of Minnesota Board of Regents, I was part of the board that hired the first female president the university's storied 168-year history. An interesting side note is that the University of Minnesota was founded in 1851 by immigrants to provide education for their children, a full 7 years before Minnesota was granted statehood. 1991, so there's the graphic. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the trend. I mean, certainly in mortuary science, like, there are some schools where probably 90+% of the class is female. Would love to see. I've probably got to try to find some data about why that is. Why males aren't going to college? Why males are what are they doing other than trying to be like these other things? Are they becoming like Mr. Moms? Are they going into skilled trades? What are they doing that they are not going to school? I think that would be pretty cool. Some different professions and the demographics of women. In fact, if you have an idea about that, drop it in the chat, drop it in the comments. If you see any references somewhere you think I should read, absolutely drop that in there so I can check it out later. Maybe follow up on the next live stream about this. Some different professions and the demographics of women that led and worked in them changed faster than others. When I graduated from mortuary school in 1980 with about 40 fellow graduates, I don't believe we had any female graduates in that class. Today, however, we hear that over 70% of mortuary students in training are female. Yep. And there is no doubt that women seem to be more interested in business occupations than ever before. Part of my research for this article was to find the demographic makeup of the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Business. For decades, the domain of enterprising male students. Last year's demographic profile indicated that today about 46 of the students enrolled there are female. You can see the demographics here. That's interesting. So if women are going to college more, okay, just on a general basis, they're going to college more, they're clearly not going for business degrees. So what then are they going for? That's the question. There is also no doubt that the consumer-facing side of funeral service has changed to a profession where a grieving family is as likely to work with a female funeral director as they are a male funeral director. But that is not all. Females are now becoming the executive leaders of many death care operations. Of what I believe are the 4 largest consumer funeral home and cemetery operators in the United States, Service Corporation International, Carriage Services, Everstory Partners, and Park Lawn Corporation, 2 of them are led by female chief executive officers. Everstory Partners led by Lily Donahue, and Park Lawn is led by Jennifer Hayes. That brings me to the story of Funeral Women Lead. An organization for the women in funeral service has been established and will, in my opinion, pave the way for more women to take leadership roles in the profession. Funeral directing in the business of funeral homes was not so long ago the complete domain of males. That is changing, and it will be interesting to see how the increasing role of women in management in the profession might change some directions. Funeral Women Lead has recruited some of the most prominent women in the profession to their management team and board. This group makes me more excited than ever that funeral service has room for everybody, and as a profession, we'll be better off for getting our leadership from a varied group of individuals. To access the Funeral Women Lead website, you can click there. You can also do a Google search and go right to it. The paradigm shift to female funeral directors has happened right in front of my eyes. Mine too. The funeral home I used to own and manage has went from 100% male licensed funeral director and staff when I started to a licensed staff that is now 60% female. Anecdotally, over my time as the owner of the funeral home, I mentored 3 young people who wanted to and eventually did become licensed funeral directors. All 3 were female. 100%. Like, heck, man, just looking at my chat, the 2 people that have piped up and said howdy tonight, you're women. And you are going to be the future of funeral service. Feel free to open your own businesses. Just saying. August, another death care movie being limited. Yeah, I just wanted to read this. I'm like, dude, what are we filming now? In the last couple of years, we've had The Burial, most recently The Mortician. So it was called The Mortician. And I think that was on Netflix. I think I saw it, and I was just like, nah. I got other crap to watch. Right now, I'm doing another watch through of the Clone Wars. Yeah, any of y'all listening watch the Clone Wars? Tell me what you think of the Clone Wars. Dude, I loved that series. Like the fact that I'm watching it a second time now that we've had all the extra movies, we've had Andor and all that. It's like there's so much that I missed that they're building more. They're building more world on. So cool. The Burial was based on the true life story of funeral home consolidation company, the Lowen Group, and some of their alleged corrupt business practices. So I did watch that one. Because I remember the Lowen Group, remember reading about the Lowen Group, and I think I've even read a couple articles about, their success and failure. I think one of the cases I studied in law school had to do with their BS they would pull. The Mortician series is based on the true life antics and out of the norm, including mass cremation of the Los Angeles mortuary and cremation company Lamb Funeral Home. So that's why I didn't watch it. I already know about Lamb. I don't need like a dramatization to tell me about it. I'm good. It's probably fair to say that neither production was good public relations for the business and people who work hard every day to bring moralization options and grief relief to hundreds and thousands of Americans. Yeah, a nice movie wouldn't sell. No one's going to watch that. Outrage makes money, yo. In late July, Shudder Productions announced that they're in the process of producing a full-length movie based on the popular fictional video game The Mortuary Assistant. You've got to be shitting me, man. You got to be kidding me. Do you know what this is, folks? Do you know what this is?
Yeah. This is some bullshit.
That's exactly what that is. In general, the game and movie are based on young student Rebecca Owens, who takes a job as a mortuary assistant at the fictional Riverfields Mortuary based in Connecticut. And everyone should know that I am so happy that I now have Resident Alien meme clips that I can use on my soundboard, because I was looking for those, waiting and waiting and waiting. I'm so happy I got them. According to this article on Deadline, actress Willa Holland has been cast in the role of Rebecca Owens, and actor Paul Sparks has been cast as mortuary owner Raymond Delver. Now, I don't play a lot of video games anymore. Like, there's the 1 or 2 that I play. I play The Division pretty much religiously, or The Division 2 religiously. I love The Division, but Division 2 is my bread and butter. I did watch a playthrough. Okay, I did watch a playthrough of The Mortuary Assistant, or whatever the hell it's called. And that's just some shock horror crap. It's basically Five Nights at Freddy's in a funeral home. I don't know. I guess the lore is cool, like the whole demon aspect and whatnot. Okay, you win, but this isn't going to be like pro-con. This is going to be the realm of basically horror fantasy. According to various sources, the movie is currently filming in Missouri. Speaking of horror fantasy, sorry to all you Missourians out there. And it's planned to be released in 2026. I'm not a big horror dude. Like, that's not the genre I go for. I don't like horror movies. So probably not going to watch this. I'll leave that to you all to comment about that. Hey, this is great. Hey, it stinks. I did throw this out. Foundation Partners Group announces new ownership. Used to know the previous owners of Foundation Partners. Sorry to see that, they're something happened, or they're just making a good business decision. Like, good for them. Death care is expanding. This article points to the areas where. Where is it going? Death care, when I first heard the phrase, consists of those businesses that offered funeral services, cremations, casket vaults, memorial products, prep room supplies, funeral home and cemetery supplies, and cemetery services. While worldwide in scope, it was a pretty small circle of products and services that were deemed death care. I recently read this article from investor-oriented 24/7 Wall Street that is titled "U.S. leads 147 billion global death care industry as private equity bets on digital disruption." I get somewhat leery when I read articles from some financial sources because many times the article is slanted in trying to convince the reader to buy one stock or another. However, I took the time to check on the author of this article, John Setu. Mr. Setu appears to be an expert in the financial markets and writes under his own byline for various publications. And in reading the linked article, it appears to me to be a general article on death care companies more than any advertising or marketing material. Although one can never be totally sure that there is no ulterior motive for the article. I'm treating this article as one of general interest rather than one with a marketing bent to it, and I think it is an interesting piece of knowledge to know when you think of expanding definition of death care. For instance, many of the companies that Mr. C2 refers to in this industry have nothing to do with the disposition of a human body, but are in the periphery of that industry, in effect, expanding the definition of death care. Part of the article deals with public companies that we know in death care: SCI, Carriage, Matthews, Security National Financial. But another part of the article, Mr. C2 hypothesizes on which companies may be the next in the greater death care world to seek an initial public offering, an IPO, to go public. In total, he describes about a dozen companies in death care, some of which you may be aware of and some of which you may not be. Some of those companies you may not be familiar with include Plotbox, Freewill, Empathy, Remento, and Settled. Fun fact, Chicago this year is the National Funeral Directors Association meeting and expo. You will find some, if not all of those companies there, because I remember talking to the Remento folks, I think, last year. Plotbox sounds familiar. Top of my head, I can't remember. There are some of the author's bets on companies that will grow in death care. As I mentioned, none of them deals with the handling of deceased human remains. And in my opinion, he's missing a lot of companies who should be right up there with those companies, as companies might be a public company in death care at some point in time. Some of those companies are Better Place Forests, Tukios, Parting Stone, Recompose, Fireless Cremation, Return Home, Sunset App. Don't know Sunset App. I recognize most, if not all, the rest. If nothing else, just naming all those companies that will be pulling their revenue dollars out of clients who are or have dealt with a recent loss of life shows how big death care is becoming. Just the existence of the companies makes a point that death care is changing, growing, and adapting to the needs and wants of those who have suffered loss. That change in adapting also makes note that just because what you have done to bring in revenue in death care in the past does not mean that you will continue to bring in that revenue without the services that clientele is looking for in the future. There may need to be adaptation and optionality in your offerings to the public to stay on top of the game. Well, yeah, I mean, you should always be adapting. You should always be evolving your business to stay in the game. Otherwise, someone else is going to take it. That change in adapting also makes note that blah, 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 blah. In any regards, a good read and good discussion starter on where death care is going. So that might be something I read, maybe do it for next time. Bye-bye. What was this? So I saw this. I saw this pull up. Word you receive fake remains. Colorado funeral director says, look for these 3 things. So I saw this and I'm like, okay, let's see what 3 things should be the indicator that you might have fake cremated remains. While authorities work to identify bodies, bones, and probable human tissue recovered from Davis Mortuary over the weekend of August 23rd, 24th, many Pueblo families who use the funeral home services may be wondering if they have possession of their loved ones' remains. A total of 24 decomposing bodies and multiple containers of bones and probable human tissue were removed from the mortuary and transferred to the El Paso County Coroner's Office for potential identification as the Colorado Bureau of Investigation continues its criminal probe into Pueblo County Coroner Brian Cotter and his brother Chris Cotter, who co-own Davis Mortuary. When the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies, or DORA, inspected the funeral on August 20th, Brian Cotter allegedly told them that some of the decomposing bodies had been in the mortuary for as long as 15 years and that some decedents' families may have been given fake human remains.
This is some bullshit.
My heart just falls into my stomach, but we do know these audits are working. Colorado Funeral Directors Association President Matt Whaley said of the door inspection that uncovered the bodies in a concealed room of the mortuary. it's not like dead bodies don't stink. They stink really bad. Okay? Your first time walking to like the decomp cooler at your medical examiner facility is not usually a pleasant experience. Like, you're within like 50, 60 feet of the place, and this thing has like an ISO 9001 air system. You can still smell it with the door closed. And that door is a freezer door, like, 4 inches thick. It stinks. Why do you think that someone's going to come into your funeral home and not smell that? Like, God. Now, people who live in Pueblo are saying, oh my God, I used that funeral home. What about my loved one? 3 steps to help verify authentic remains. Here's a hint. Please don't taste test them. Whaley provided 3 proactive steps that the funeral home's customers can take to help them determine if they have actual cremated remains. First, check the death certificate. About halfway down the certificate, under the name of the funeral, is a space for method of disposition, which should be filled out with cremation. How the hell does that prove you have cremated remains? Like, no, you know what? People are that stupid. I assume people are that stupid that if you do toss the body out back, that you won't check the cremation box. So, first sign, probably not a bad idea that they screw up the paperwork. Okay. To the right of that is a space for place of disposition, which should list the name of the crematorium, followed by city, county, and state where that cremation took place. Once again, you're lying. Okay? Hopefully your funeral director that is being shady crap and is doing stuff like this is literally that stupid not to put the name of a crematorium, so at least there's that red flag. But my God. Next, they can check that with what they received, and there should be a metal ID coin attached to the ashes, and that is what is given back to the next of kin. And the only way the funeral home can advocate who the decedent was. The cremated remains will come with a certificate of cremation from the funeral home, which will list the date and where the cremation happened. That one's the better one. You take your serial number disc, you contact the crematory, and the date and time of the cremation should match what should be on the crematory records, 100%. One thing that is important to note, I once had a person say, well, the disc needs to be scorched. If there's no scorching on the disc, that disc is fake. And see, when I did cremations at the funeral home I worked at, I wouldn't put the disc on the actual fire brick. So I wouldn't put it inside the retort area where the flame and the particulate and all that could get to it. I would take the disc and I would put it right on the door. So as the door came down and it closed, it would hold the disc in place. And no, that's not going to create such a gap that all the air is going to go in there and you're going to have a burnout. Like, that just didn't happen. The end result was, when you raise the door to rake or reposition, your disc basically isn't getting scorched or particulate or nasty. And there may be others that do that. And the reason for that is when I feel someone inspects the bag, if someone wants to open the urn and look inside, that disc, I want it legible. Okay, 100% I want it legible. And if by accident I'm kicking it around in there, if I'm raking or something and it gets too scratched up, again, just my paranoia. Also, when they open it up and they see like the scorched, nasty disc on there, I feel that doesn't give a good presentation. I think that would trigger something for some people. So I just put the disc in the door, closed the door on top of it. And when I ended up zip tying the bag later, the disc is just sitting there. You can read the number, clear as day, life is good. Not saying it's the best way to do it, just saying that's the way that I did it, and it worked for me. If any of those 3 things, the death certificate, metal ID coin, and certificate of cremation is not provided, that would probably raise some doubt that maybe I am one of those families. Not wrong, okay? Not wrong. Well, for those who cannot find proof that all 3 of those steps have been taken, it's a good idea to reach out to the CBI and not take matters into their own hands. The CBI has established a dedicated victim assistance line for families who have used Davis mortuary services. CBI is encouraging families to fill out a questionnaire to assist with the investigative process. Whaley said funeral homes are also required to keep logs of when cremations occurred, and those logs should match the paperwork of the decedent's loved one has received. Now, different states have different requirements, okay? If you are using a third-party crematory, you likely don't have the logs of the date and the time, the start and the stops, and all that sort of stuff. You will have the chain of custody where, you delivered the body, they took custody of it, and then you should have a receipt, or you will have signed something during pickup that acknowledges that you, the funeral home, have received the cremated remains back. So really important, wherever you are, make sure you know what you're talking about before you go in and start demanding that the funeral home tell you when the cremation started and stopped, or you want to see the temperature chart from the side of the machine. Like, dude, if they're not the ones doing the cremation, they're not going to have a copy of the temperature chart. Like, that's not what most funeral homes have to keep if they're not doing that. He said that the investigation also likely involves a forensic pathologist to determine if what families treat were actual human remains and not something else like wood ashes or cement. He said that family members should not try any of the online suggestions, such as adding water to see if the material firms up. Oh my God, dude.
This is some bullshit.
Dude, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say.
We have a problem. We have a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we have problems.
In other news, don't be taking ideas from 4chan on how to identify your cremated remains. I've been in this business for 38 years, and if you handed me both remains and cement, I'm not certain I can tell the difference. Getting back, what was the molecular structure of a human, whether you call it dust or ashes, there is going to be a little mass and volume to that depending on the size of the person, Whaley explained. Yeah, and it comes down to processing. Like, if you have one of the modern processors, for the life of me, I can't remember the name of what the pulverizers are called right now. You might have a very, very fine powder with almost like no recognizable bone fragments. If you have an older version of that, or you are not replacing the blade inside when you're supposed to, you'll have a lot more bone fragments. So you can't just look at the bag and go, okay, yeah, this is cremated remains. Yeah, like absolutely, you're going to want to have a lab kind of look at it and give you a full report. Finally, Willie said he wants Colorado residents to know that rare incidents of cremation not taking place are the exception and not the rule. God, yeah. Yeah. The trust level of the profession has been so damaged in the state of Colorado, but I need you to understand that there's so many great funeral home directors in the state, he said. As a result of this, there are going to be more people wanting to witness the cremations, and if that is what it's going to take, you will see more funeral homes inviting people to come out, watch, and even push the button when cremations take place. And that's the truth. Like, I really wish, from a liability standpoint, the industry would embrace the idea of a witness cremation. You go and you ID the body just like you do anywhere else, and then you are there when the cremation retort starts. Like, that is something that people should take into consideration as a necessary part of our industry to reduce things like this. So, judge rejects plea deal for Colorado funeral director who abused 191 corpses. So this was the one, I think, from about a little bit more than a year ago that they really overachieved. And, oh man, made the entire justification for a licensing authority, licenses, inspections, and all of that. So congratulations. You are an idiot. A judge on Friday rejected a plea agreement for a Colorado funeral home owner who acknowledged abusing 191 corpses after family members described the pain and shame they've carried since learning their loved ones' bodies were left to rot. The rare decision to reject the plea agreement that called for a 20-year prison sentence followed anguished testimony from family members seeking more severe punishment. Among them was Christina Page, whose son David Page, 20, was killed by police during a mental health crisis in 2019. His body languished in the funeral for years as Page carried her with her an urn that she wrongly thought contained her son's cremated remains. Dude, you have to be a special type of scumbag. Like, seriously. I loved it. I cried over it. I held it close during sleepless nights. I kissed him. It wasn't him at all. What happened to my son has broke me in ways I cannot repair. Yeah. For 4 years, John Halford and his wife Carrie ran a fraudulent scheme from their Return to Nature funeral home in Colorado Springs while maintaining a lavish lifestyle. They took money from customers for cremations only to stash the bodies and give the family dry concrete resembling ashes. Page and others said the plea agreements would have essentially erased the crimes committed against 191 people whose bodies were discovered in 2023 in a building in Penrose, Colorado. The agreement said Halford's state sentence was to run concurrently with a 20-year federal sentence, meaning he could have been freed many years earlier than if the sentences had been run consecutively. Yeah, I'd kind of back that one up. I don't want you doing one and then one. I don't want you doing both at the same time. Like, you overachieved, man. You get the FAFO award. You got to do this one after the other. Colorado has struggled to effectively oversee funeral homes and for many years had some of the weakest regulations in the nation. It had a slew of abuse cases, including an estimated 20 decomposing corpses discovered this week at a funeral home in Pueblo. Hey, we've been saying for years, this is ridiculous. You have no regulation. Talk to your elected officials. John Halford already is bound for prison for pleading guilty to federal fraud charges. The rejection of the plea deal effectively resets the separate state criminal case. Halford can now withdraw his guilty plea, sending the case to trial. He could also keep his guilty plea and let the judge sentence him without any guarantee of the outcome. He returns to court on September 12th. I think the smart thing to do there, from my perspective, let the judge sentence you, man. Do not put this in front of a jury. Don't let them, from a legal standpoint, whatever the judge is going to hit you with is probably going to be hard enough. If you're already looking at getting a right ass whooping from the judge, imagine how much worse it's going to be if you actually put it before a jury. Like, man, I'm telling you right now, just tap out, walk away, be done with it. Like, just do it, bro. Just do it. Defense attorney says trial would not provide families with answers. Some of the victims who filled the court seemed to brace themselves for the judge to accept the deal and then applauded when he announced his decision. Bentley said he never rejected a plea agreement in his 9 years on the bench and called it an extreme action by the court. He suggested he was swayed after listening to Friday's testimony. I heard an overwhelming perception that the justice that had been worked out between the attorneys was justice that did not accurately reflect the truth of the victims' experiences, Bentley said. The prosecutor, Rachel Powell, has argued that a 20-year sentence was appropriate since abuse of a corpse is the least serious type of felony under the law, with a possible sentence ranging from probation up to a maximum of 18 months in prison. Okay. Let's see, kids. Through the miracle of calculators. 18 times 191 equals divided by 12. Yeah, so if we hit him oh gosh. If we hit this guy with a maximum of 18 months per corpse, we would be looking at 286 and a half years of prison. So, something tells me you might not want to poke the dragon and catch the fire because, yeah, it's going to be a little crazy. I don't think for a second we're looking at like 191 cases of probation. Like, there's just no way that would come out. And if that came out, that's absolutely something where, hey, it's time for some, like, prairie justice. Like, burn down the courthouse, do what you need to do, because clearly there's some crap going on there. Defense attorney Adam Steigerwald said a trial would not deliver what family members wanted answers. He's not wrong. Like, he's not wrong. The answers the people are looking for, sadly, are not satisfactory, and they largely don't exist. Samantha Naranjo, whose grandmother's body was found at the funeral home over a year after she died, said Bentley acknowledged the experience of the families of the 191 people whose remains were identified, and also of the relatively approximately 1,000 additional people whose remains were handled by the funeral home. Bentley said those people are considered potential victims, even though the Halfords were not prosecuted for how their remains were handled. I felt heard, she said, as tears welled up in her eyes. Carrie Halford is accused of the same crimes as her husband and has also pleaded guilty. Her sentencing on the corpse abuse charges has not been scheduled. The couple was accused of letting 189 bodies decay. In 2 other instances, the wrong bodies were buried. 4 remains were yet to be identified, the district attorney's office said this week. The Halfords got a license for their funeral home in 2017, and authorities said the bodies started piling up by 2019. Damn, dude. Like, that's crazy. Like, seriously, that is seriously crazy. I'm not even going to put a meme up there. That is insane. Literally, you blew it within the first 2 years of your business being operated. Like, you're special. You're really special. The Halfords bought luxury items after defrauding the government. As the gruesome count grew, John and Carrie Halford were also defrauding the federal government of nearly $900,000 in pandemic relief aid. With the money from families and the federal government, the Halfords brought luxury goods, a GMC Yukon Infinity worth $120,000 combined, and $31,000 in cryptocurrency. And dude, if you would have just done your job right, for crying out loud, you could have had all of that. Like, that's the sad part. If you simply would have done the job right, you could have just had all of that. Maybe took you an extra couple of years, but you could have had the same exact stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Howard Beckham of the Florida State College at Jacksonville is here with us, the program director there. Unfortunately, Brother Beckham, you are not one of the lucky guys who had an intro set up on the meme board. But for the next time you attend the live stream, I promise you were the next one I was working on. I just ran out of time. How come these people always seem to walk away with light sentences? You know, that's a good question. The first is, number one, when we usually catch clowns doing this sort of stuff, it's usually limited. It's usually limited to, like, a couple of bodies. The second part of that, especially early on, we never occurred that this type of thing could occur. Like, people would not think that human beings could act in this manner. So some states didn't even have this as a crime, or they make it a felony, but the lowest felony possible. Now, I do not know how old this Halford guy is. Like, I just don't. Maybe, I wonder if we can find out real quick through the miracle of the internet. John Halford. I could probably pull him up from his booking. So, okay, 44 years old. 44 years old. All right. So 20 years puts him at 67. Okay, 20 years puts him at 67. If the judge gives him 30 years, 40 years, it's essentially a life sentence. Okay, it's essentially a life sentence. Do I think this guy deserves a life sentence? Can't say that I don't. Like, I can't say that I don't. Especially if they... especially if you did it in such a short time. Like, that kind of signals to me that you had the intent. Like, you went into this knowing you were going to try to do this. Like, you deserve to spend a hell of a lot of time in prison. But 20 years, that's a considerable chunk for a person in their 40s. Really is. 2023, a putrid smell poured from the building and the police turned up. Again, how do people not think they're not going to notice the smell? Like, come on. Investigators swarmed the building, donning hazmat suits and painstakingly extracting the bodies. Halford and his wife were arrested in Oklahoma, where John Halford had family more than a month later. I mean, if you're going to try to go out on the land, bro, try to get out of the country. More people like him need to try to run to Mexico, where the cartels will eat them alive. Like, I'm not opposed to frontier justice for people like that. I mean, the families aren't going to probably get their answers one way or another, but at least if they did, like, death by carteleño, by all means, like, that's a hell of a good way to go. You're going to pay for it in pain. That's karma. Families learned that their cathartic moments of grief, spreading a mother's ashes in Hawaii or creating a son's urn in a rocking chair, were tainted by deception. It was as if the signposts of the grieving process had been torn away, unraveling months and years of working through their loved one's deaths. Yeah, that's like the worst part about it, man, is you don't just live through it again. I don't think you're going to live through something way more horrible. Like, I can't even imagine. Like, I just can't. I'm telling you, like, if I ever found out that the cremated remains I get back from my dogs, when my dogs pass away, I have them cremated, I keep their ashes. Like, when I finally cash out, those are going with me. Like, my pets are going with me. I'm not going to scatter. Like, that's my thing. If I found out that someone, like, threw my dog somewhere, disrespected my dog like that, I'm telling you, John Wick would get out of the way. I'd be so pissed. Like, if it happened to someone I love, ooh, crime against humanity probably wouldn't describe what would happen next. So it's like, one, this guy's lucky to be alive. Like, I'm sure there's a couple of people there, they're just waiting for an opportunity. Um, again, humans are in pain, and that dipstick brought it on himself. I think this has to do with the same article. This has to do with the first one, where, how to identify the cremated remains. This has to do with that Davis mortuary. We'll just we'll leave that one out. So yeah, folks, that is that. I never put the statistics up. I never got to see how many people are actually here hanging out and saying hi. Where is that? There it is, YouTube Live Control Panel. Let me tell you what, man, this new computer is absolutely kicking ass. Like, I'm getting no problems. I gotta type in a freaking password. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. I never do stuff like that when I'm live streaming. You know what I can do, though? I can pop up the old Chrome and go right to the actual YouTube channel. So any other questions, man? Anything y'all want me to talk about or offer some, like, really poor life advice while I see how many people tuned in? This was a last minute thing. I kind of I always say that, hey, I'm going to be more regimented. I really did let my life get away with me this last month. This last month has been crazy. Like, am I the only one that's been, dude, what's in the water? Are they sprinkling, like, methamphetamines on people's cosmic brownies or something? Like, this month was literally crazy for me. I'll tell you who I miss being in the chat is Tiffany. If you are here, shout out. If you listen later, shout out to you, babe. Miss you. Hope things are doing good over there in London. I know that y'all having a little bit of trouble there. Look at the analytics here, real quick. So what does a Ghostbusters Club do? They're largely philanthropic. If there are some out there that are all about the whole paranormal, we're actually hunting ghosts and dressing up with proton packs, like, I don't know about that. The group that is over here in Dallas that I try to link up with, or I contribute to their causes, is the Ghostbusters Texas Rangers Edition. Generally, they just do all sorts of, like, general fundraising for causes. Like, they did what in Florida we would call, like, adopt a classroom. Getting school supplies to give to schools. They have right now Sony Motion Picture Corporation. I forget what the actual name of the organization is. Sony is matching registered Ghostbuster clubs, so that if they raise $3,000, they'll match it $3,000 up to, like, I think $10,000 or $100,000. I can't remember. So Ghost Corps is kind of this arm of Sony that kind of establishes the Ghostbusters brand, I think is the best way to explain it. And if someone has a better way to explain it, by all means, toss that crap in the comments later, and I can talk about it more. Um, the but they're basically using cosplay to get people to give them money to do cool things with, and I'm all for that, like 100%. They had here in Dallas. I first met the people in that group, I think, at a place called Titan Comics. Went down there largely because I wanted to see what type of like stuff they were packing. Did they build their own packs? Are they using the HasLab packs that you can buy that every so often come up? Because when I was at American Board, I brought a HasLab pack, which is something that Hasbro Toys made, and I brought with because it's very lightweight. The one that's in back of me, that's the one that I built from scratch. I ordered the resin shell from someone. I got the aluminum, had it machined, all that sort of crap. So that damn thing weighs like 35 or 40 pounds. That is insanely heavy to wear all the time. And it turned out that most of the folks there, I think the majority built their own packs. So it's kind of like the 501st. If you're familiar with that group, the 501st is a philanthropic group that uses Star Wars as their platform. So they dress up as stormtroopers, and they're a pretty powerful philanthropic group. In fact, when The Mandalorian was being filmed, cool bit of trivia, the production company realized they didn't have enough stormtrooper outfits. So what they did is they reached out to the local 501st and said, hey, would you guys like to be in the new Star Wars series? Because we need stormtroopers. And let me tell you what, if you're in the 501st and someone says, hey, do you want some screen time in a television series on Star Wars? It's probably going to be hot as hell. You don't say no. So that's how they got a bunch of those stormtroopers in the first season of The Mandalorian, is they invited the cosplayers to come do it. And in many cases, the cosplayers had better stuff than the actual production company did. So, Howard, that answers the question, I hope. That they're just a philanthropic group of cosplayers that have a lot of fun doing what they do. The other step that they do is when you have things like the comic book conventions or whatever little cons go on, they typically have kid activities. Like they will teach science using ecto slime, the same slime that you can make with, cornstarch and corn syrup or something like that. So there's a lot of things these groups do that are pretty cool. And I keep toying that, I'm going to get involved in something like that at some point, and that may happen. I'm absolutely going to like deck out my Ram 1500 in Ghostbuster crap the first chance that I get. Like I'm almost to the point where I'm happy with the design that I want on that thing, and as soon as that's a go, I'm reaching out to a local body shop that does wraps or does painting or something, and I'm gonna have them, Ghostbuster my damn truck. Deanna, good evening. How are you? Do you know about disc spray and tissue gas? Have you ever used it, and what is the ratio? So, disc spray is a topical disinfectant. And I believe Dodge published an article regarding disc spray and how it can be used to combat tissue gas. So I'm going to pull open a Chrome window and try to find that article. What the article did not say, and what it was not recommending, is you use it exclusively. Okay? So the first thing is you have to have the proper chemical formulation in your embalming machine, and then you use the disc spray as a supplement, if I'm remembering the article correctly. So here we are. Let me drop this down into the shared screen. Boink, here we go. So I found this by typing in disc spray, tissue gas, Dodge, First thing that pulled up was this product guidelines PDF from the Dodge company. One of the things I like about Dodge, and I think Pierce also does a great job of this, so I don't want to say, hey, one chemical company does this better than others. They both do a really good job, but I think Dodge has simply done it a little bit longer, having all that stuff accessible on their website, not through a login. It's just there for anyone who might need it. What they say is 8 ounces per gallon, was it? Let's do a quick search for that. Special uses. When embalming bodies that show evidence of tissue gas or gas gangrene, add 8 ounces of disspray to each half gallon of arterial chemical. So it's 1 bottle for every gallon. They say pour it in there. So again, really key point here is you're not just putting this and injecting it, you're using this in addition to a proper preservative. So you're going to want to use something in the Dodge catalog. You probably just want to reach for good old Purple Jesus, Intrafiant, if Intrafiant OTC or Intrafiant with Dynachrome, depending on which one you're more comfortable with. The only big difference between them is Dynachrome has dye in it already. OTC does not have a very active dye. I don't think it has an active dye at all. So it is imperative that if you're using Intrafiant OTC, you have to add a supplemental dye to that. You're going to get no color. So that's the kicker right there. Howard writes, this spray, 40% antiseptic soap, 40% water, 20% not as good as Halt or other chemical company tissue gas treatment. I mean, if you're saying you've used that as the primary injector, great. Are you using that? So since you're still here, I can just ask you: are you using that as a topical thing that you're putting on top of the body? Because I don't think I've ever heard of actually injecting antiseptic soap. So how are you using that? Oh, in the cavity? Okay. Okay, so as a cavity injection. That makes sense. Absolutely. 100%. Okay. Because I'm like, dude, you're injecting soap? Why have you never taught me your ways, Master Jedi? Like, come on. So yeah, I would say that would probably be pretty effective. Absolutely. So there's your answer, Deanna. Basically, 1 bottle per gallon of an adequate chemical formulation. That's going to be something more than 2%, right? So if we're probably looking at like a 3.5, 4%, I'm telling you that if I was going to be doing it, I'm probably going to inject a 7% solution, like minimum 7%. I tend to go heavy with this stuff, and I'm not afraid to use waterless, especially in a case with like tissue gas. I'll formulate specifically for that area, and I will inject that area unless the entire body is like corrupted, at which point then you're doing waterless no matter what. So let's rewind that real quick. If we are looking at tissue gas in a single area, okay, the 2 biggest things that people do in that type of situation is the first, if you are doing this textbook, okay, if you're doing this textbook and not good old boy, textbook says isolate the affected area, leg, limb, head, whatever it is, okay? Inject the rest of the body with something appropriate. And probably something maybe, I'd probably say kick it up a little bit of a notch. Probably don't have to, but I would do it just to say that I did it as a comfort zone. And then for the affected area, what you do is you build a firewall around the area. So you're going in, you're hypodermic injecting like straight cavity fluid, so that if that gas gangrene starts creeping from the limb into the abdomen or torso or whatever, it's gonna hit that cavity fluid wall. And then when you inject the affected area, whatever that you are injecting, half gallon, 1 gallon, because that's probably why they said per half gallon, because they're thinking you're only going to inject that limb, so you're probably doing it in a small quantity. Then you would put in that 8 ounces for a half gallon, 16 ounces for 1 gallon, and inject an appropriate solution there. So if you had, say, a left leg, that was busted. A good strategy to start would be, okay, let me build a firewall with cavity fluid, the strongest crap that I got, Permacav 50 to Seco, something that absolutely takes no prisoners as a cavity fluid, dry cav, whatever. If you are in the Pierce line, you're probably looking at uh, uh, what is it, Power Packed? Man, I stopped teaching embalming in a lab and I forget all of my damn chemicals. Like, seriously, what is going on here? Um, Pierce, embalming, chemicals, cavity, fluid. Okay, what would I be using from the Pierce catalog for something like this? Let me drag this into the big screen so I can see again. I don't think I've ever used Manhattan 27 as a cavity fluid. I've used Fix 30. I'd probably use Fix 30. Yeah, Power Pack 45. That's the one I was thinking of. Power Pack 45, the blue one. Couldn't remember if that was Pierce or Dodge. So it's Pierce. I probably would stay away from stuff like NXT. I like NXT 20. I used the NXT 20 in the prep room. I really like that. I thought that was really cool. I've used Petrocell. Don't think I've used VX11. Royal 33 might also be an alternative. I guess my thing is, if I'm dealing with tissue gas, I just want to absolutely kill everything around it. Like, it's the nuclear option. I can't remember if Power Pack 45 is a triple base. Royal 33 is a triple base, so it's going to have carbolic acid in it. So I would probably want to have a triple base cavity fluid just to say that I'm using like everything possible to stop the microorganism. Inject the body normally, and then for that one limb, I'm gonna grab the heavy duty stuff, Power Tone Vivid, something like that. Put in the what is Pierce's spray called? I can't remember what Pierce's spray called, but Pierce has a topical spray just like disc spray for Dodge. That's one of the cool things about this, is that would be something that I would try. Like, ask your Pierce rep, hey, Dodge says I can take disc spray, add it to half gallon, 8 ounces per half gallon to whatever I'm injecting for tissue gas. Can I do that with your products? If so, what do you recommend? And they should be able to tell you, yeah, you take the topical disinfectant, add it to your Power Tone Vivid at the same ratio, should get kind of the same results. So that's what I would say. Bring over the chat. That's something I should try to get some empty chemical bottles and fill them up with some colored water and build like a little lighted thing over here. You can see that the desk is coming along. I had all sorts of crud on that. I finally found my soldering irons. I'm ready to start getting back into making some Ghostbuster cosplay crap. I got some ideas of some stuff I want to build. I've already got all the parts. I've been trying to get the work surface to start like soldering. Added with the chaser of 50 cavity. Yeah, like I absolutely. Howard is so. What Professor Beckham is saying is, say I'm gonna put this stuff in first, the disc spray, antiseptic, and water. And then I'm going to put in my cavity fluid as well. I've never done it. If Professor Beckham says, hey, this worked and it's worked in practice, and then I'm going to say, preach it, amen to that, and away we go. What I would probably do, if I was going to play with his, if I was going to play with his formulation, I wouldn't use water. I wouldn't use water. And now, I am not afraid to use product, okay? I will spend the money. What I would do is I would use some of that green crap, that formaldehyde-free cavity fluid. I would use that as the chaser because that's going to have desiccants in it. So if I was going to use, if I was going to improve upon Beckham Juice 1.0, I would simply substitute the water for a formaldehyde-free cavity chemical. So that way I'm probably getting a lot more salt in there, which will help desiccate the tissues as well as pull water from around it because the microorganism is going to want water to survive. So that's how I would basically, slap a new coat of paint on what Professor Beckham's saying. That's amazing. Thanks, guys. Next year you could come to Atlanta for Dragon Con and wear your backpack. Dude, I'm telling you, I would die. Okay, I would die wearing that backpack for a con. If I came to con, I would have to wear the HasLab pack, just because it's like 10 pounds. It weighs nothing in comparison. Um, but yeah, I haven't been to a con in forever. Literally, I haven't been in a con in probably over a decade. I hit the Oddities and Curiosities Expo. I hit that last year when it was in Dallas, but that's hardly a cosplay situation. That's just like crazy stuff. Managed to actually find at that Oddities and Curiosities the missing. When Ghostbusters Afterlife came out, they came out with the Ecto One popcorn bucket, and I was trying to score one of those kind of on the cheap, like as near retail as possible, because I didn't get one when the movie came out, and eBay was just being price gouge city. I found one at the Oddities Expo at like $5 over retail, and I was like, "Score! That's coming home." Um, have I ever used Esco Hexi? I have not used. Actually, I have used Esco. What? Dude, dude, this is some raw stuff. This is some seriously hardcore shade by our friends over at Frigid. Look at this. Look at this brujeria. This is some serious shit talking here. Look at that. I type in Esco embalming fluids, and the sponsor that pops up is Frigid. That's some shade. That's some serious shade, man.
Is this some bullshit?
That is some serious bullshit. Oh, I feel bad for the folks over at Esco having to deal with that. That's harsh. Let's see. Esco product catalog. What have I used at Esco? What is their arterials? So short answer is no, I've not used any Esco products. I don't recognize any of these. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that I'm involved with mortuary schools and like I just haven't used this product. I'd like to play with it. Like I'd like to play with it. The water's for viscosity. Yeah, and I get that. The water is for the viscosity, like 100%. You're making it so it actually flow into the body, not just stick in the tube. But again, the way that I would perk that up 100% is I would add a formaldehyde-free chaser to the mix to lower the viscosity of it, and then get the benefit of all the stuff that's in there. I wouldn't even use water corrective. Like an argument could be made instead of using water because of the hard salts and all the minerals in there, we could use like a water corrective, and I wouldn't even want that. Like I really like the idea of using formaldehyde-free chemical as a supplemental chemical. Um, my first encounter with with that theory was mortuary school. We got a back then a guy by the name of Jay Rhodes. Shout out to my boy Jay, cool guy. He was the Dodge representative for that area of Florida, and Dodge sent a case of an experimental formaldehyde-free product to St. Petersburg College for use in their embalming labs to get some test results in the real world. And Professor Kevin Davis was my embalming lab instructor for that lab. I don't think Professor Brown was in. I don't remember, but I know Kevin was for sure. And he said, "Okay, you're going to use it, and then want you to, I think, write a discussion board or write a paper about how you would use it, what you thought of it, etc." And my comments are basically what we know as textbook comments regarding formaldehyde-free fluids now. Doesn't firm for squat, like at all, garbage. But what was really cool about it is it gets everywhere formaldehyde fluid does not. So when you have formaldehyde-based fluid, it is preserving the arteries as you're injecting it, right? And that's one of the issues with when you inject from the neck or whatever it is. The primary point of injection is going to have the tendency to have the most over embalming because the most fluid runs through that area. And also, the artery around it is going to harden the most, and the capillaries that are going to be subjected to it the longest are going to harden the most, which then affects how much actually gets into the tissue spaces. So what I thought a formaldehyde-free chemical would be ideal for is an actual pre-injection, right? It crosses that line of no preservative value. It has preservative value. And you could use that as a capillary flush and then put in your formaldehyde fluid on the other end of that. So if you found yourself in a bad situation that, one, you didn't inject a pre-injection in water. You injected basically a salt solution with alcohol. And that's exactly what I would do on the really hardcore cases in Miami-Dade. Like when I was teaching at Miami-Dade College, we got indigent bodies, and those bodies were in pretty rough condition sometimes. And people had argued with me, saying, "Oh, well, you can't do. The textbook says you can't do a pre-injection on a body. Not supposed to, because you're increasing your liability. You're increasing your risk." But if you know what you're doing, can you do a pre-injection on a hard case? Yeah. And you better damn well be ready to explain yourself when it goes south. So if you had to do something like that, 100% advocate you need to use a formaldehyde-free embalming chemical, because that at least has some preservative chemical. Better than water 100%. And then if you see it there, right, because you can put the dye in it like everything else, now you know you're going to get formaldehyde in there 100%. Like, you probably want to play it really slow, really steady, something maybe with really strong with delayed release. So it gets in there, it saturates, and then the formaldehyde releases and it starts to preserve. That's why if you're using something like intrafine OTC, what you might see is an embalmer may take something like restorative, and they'll pour like a quarter of a bottle of restorative in there on a complicated case. Like, oh my God, why are you adding humectant to a solution for a complicated case? Because I want to take away the immediate preservation action so I can try to sneak it where it has to go before the formaldehyde comes out and starts doing its job. Now, the way Jay Rhodes explained it to me, and again, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it presents it in a sense, it presents it in a way that makes sense. When you add restorative to something like intrafine OTC, it coats the formaldehyde molecule. So it allows the formaldehyde molecule to get where it has to go, and then once it separates from the restorative, that's when it starts doing the preservation. And from a scientific standpoint, I don't know if it coats the molecule or not, but adding in a humectant like that is going to delay the release of the formaldehyde getting into the cell, which is why you have the delayed reaction. It's not going to harden up as quick. Hence, it should coat something like a capillary and also kind of have that same effect. This is me hypothesizing. I've not done studies on this. My homie Damon De La Cruz, Dr. De La Cruz over at Cypress College, that's right up his alley. Like, that'd be a good question to ask him if you ever see him at a conference or something. They're pretty good. 16.5 ounce in each bottle of Esco. Okay, so you get a little bit of extra bang for your buck. That's cool. I like adding the arterial instead of water. Yeah, 100%. I don't like adding dye. I don't add dye if I don't have to. If I have to add color, I add more arterial. I try to find exactly what I need to add to get my color with the arterial. And I will say damn near without exception, like 99 out of 100 cases, if I add the extra arterial that I need to get the color I'm looking for, I get a hell of a lot better preservation. No ifs, ands, or buts. And I'm not going to get dehydration. I'm not going to get that other stuff if I am using an appropriate chemical for the case that I am working on. So if I need something hardcore, but I also can't be turning them into prunes, I'm going to reach for something like Triton 28 or Regal, depending on if it's Pierce or Dodge, respectively. And then I will add as much as I need until I get the color I'm looking for, or I'll add that extra 2 ounces of dye until I get the color that I'm looking for. But I always err on preservative over supplements, and I think for the vast majority, especially the arterials that have suntan or those deeper color dyes, the more reds, the more oranges, not the light pinks. I will absolutely try to find the right ratio where I'm getting the color that I want without using extra dye. Any other questions, folks? Oh, I have dye splotch all the damn time. You kidding me? And the fun part is, I could never tell if it was because I suck at what I'm doing, and it's probably a good amount that I suck what I'm doing, versus conditions in the body that just make the dye splotch. Like, for a long time, I thought I was screwing things up because I used to get excellent color on the bodies that I embalmed when I was in practice. And I was using the same formulations in Miami when I first became a professor in like 2012 to 2014, when I was doing a lot of embalming before I became a lecturer, and then only maybe taught one embalming lab a year. Couldn't figure out why the dye would be in splotchy. I mean, I tried using different combinations of arterial with dye. I tried increasing or decreasing the water corrective. I mean, all sorts of crap. And then Jeff over at the Eccles company told me, well, the big problem is Dodge doesn't manufacture its own chemicals anymore. It doesn't compound it from scratch. They buy pre-made product and then they compound the premix, and they are reliant on whatever they are getting, whether it's the formalin solution or whatever, on someone else that's making it. Whereas with his product in Eccles, they compound everything from the ground up. They make their own formalin solution, so they know exactly what they're dealing with. And so I was talking with Jay Rhodes about that in my lab in Miami. He says, "Oh yeah, something changed in the Chromatech where it just blotches." And when Jeff, a couple years later, so this is the reason why it does it. The way Jeff explained it makes sense. Like, if you're using other people's stuff as the core, that might be why it's not working as well. So I completely eliminated Chromatech from my catalog because it was just a crap blotchy chemical. And the only other times I would get blotchiness is in bodies that had like some really severe conditions. Whether it was, I mean, the bodies that I embalmed in Miami, without exception, for adult bodies, without exception, minimum 2 week waiting period. By the time I got them, the date of death was 2 weeks prior. On average, the bodies I'm getting are a month and a half old, somewhere around there. And the largest body that I had, the longest in length between time of death and prep, I think was just under or over a year. And I actually asked myself, dude, how did this happen? Because bodies need to be disposed of once they're in funeral home care pretty quickly. Well, it's simple. It got forgotten somewhere. It never made it to a funeral home. No one ever called. And whatever facility this body was at, they just walked by it basically every single day. And I don't remember if it was a hospital or what, but I remember going, wow, if that happened at a funeral home, they would have been hit with a pretty hard fine. And that body, if you looked at it, you wouldn't even know that it was that long in the cooler. It was covered in mold, like 100%. We spent a lot of time scraping that stuff off. But I can also tell you, I did something, I guess, that would not be good to do in front of students because it kind of throws the teaching into a tailspin. I one-pointed it. I wanted to prove that, if you know what you're doing and you understand the process, you have a good command of it, you're able to one point bodies even like that. Um, and I remember that body got a little splotchy in the legs, but the face lit right up like perfect. I couldn't have asked for better color. I really couldn't have. So again, to this day, I don't know when I did encounter splotchiness, was it my inability as an embalmer, or was it poor chemical? I don't know. Um, so most modern chemical companies, okay, most modern chemical companies, my understanding via Jeff over at Eccles, they do not make the formalin solution. They do not make the saline. They don't make this. They buy that stuff from suppliers. Then they take that formalin base and then they add their product, their intellectual products to it to make their final product. Okay? It's like saying that the car is made in Japan but assembled in the United States. They buy the component parts and then they compound that together, which is different from buying the methanol, buying the formaldehyde, and then creating your formalin solution in house so that you are doing the quality control on that. In the new embalming book, it talks about one of the new pieces of information that was omitted from all the previous editions is the inclusion of the fact that there are differing grades of formalin solution, and the chemical companies purchase the formalin solution in whatever grade they're supposed to get. Well, if there's an issue, there's an impurity, there's like, you think you're getting 91 octane, but you're only getting 89, that can have an effect on the batch. Like, most certainly that can cause problems. And I'm not here to suggest that, the products are inferior, they don't do the job. I'm just saying that when you are using some of these other, when you have that parting out, don't be surprised if you have some unintended consequences. Like, you wouldn't think that it would happen, but it did. And I think Chromatech is a textbook example of that. When I was an apprentice, all the way until I went to mortuary school, or I started teaching in mortuary school, my go-to mix was 1 bottle of Intrafiant with Dinachrome, 2 bottles of Chromatech Pink. That's it. Every body I embalm, for the most part, that is the starting mix. And when I was an apprentice, the color we would get on bodies was perfect. That's the mix that my preceptors used. My preceptor's name was Pete Burge. And I knew that when Pete walked in the door in that Duotronic, I better have, 3 gallons of water, the 2 bottles of Chromatech, the 1 bottle of Intrafiant, and then he would look to see what we were getting into, and then he might add a little bit of something extra. He might add some more dye. He would make that determination right then and there. And we never had blotchy issue problems. So when I started teaching embalming at the college, I was very surprised to see that I was getting blotchy shit all the time using the formulation that I had used for years. And I thought I was doing something wrong, so I would increase or decrease the amount of the water corrective. I would increase or decrease the amount of the co-injection, trying to figure out why my dye was being blotchy. And then what I realized, it was never blotchy if I only used Intrafine. It was only blotchy if I used Chromatech. So then I bought other types of Chromatech. There's Chromatech Pink, there's Chromatech, and there's Chromatech Tan. So I noticed that the Chromatech Tan was not as blotchy as the Chromatech Pink. So then I swapped out the Chromatech Pink for Chromatech Tan, and after about a year and a half, that started getting blotchy. And then I used Chromatech, and then that was blotchy from the day that I used it. And I could not figure out why, with damn near identical conditions, identical formulations, because I kept all that crap in an Excel spreadsheet, why I was getting these differing results. And the only two things that are the answer, the only two possibility is I suck and I don't understand, or there's something else going on in the body that I don't know about, that I can't bet on. Like, maybe there's a salt imbalance, maybe there's a disease, like I don't know what, but there's something in the body itself. that's that. So I just stopped using Chromatech, and a lot of my dye blotchiness went away. Not fully, not 100%. I'd still get blotchy stuff here and there if I was using Intrafiant with the Dynachrome or something like that. Like I'd see blotchy on the abdomen. Maybe I'd get some in the face here and there, but generally, if I saw blotchiness, it was abdomen and legs. Um, According to Jeff over at Eccles, they make their own stuff from scratch. They create their own formalin. They use they buy very specific products in order to make what it is they make. It's kind of like Coca-Cola does not use the local water. Coca-Cola makes their product with Dasani. End of story. So that's kind of the approach, according to Jeff, what Eccles does. 1 power tone, 1 interfine, maybe 1 bottle of medicine. I like medicine. Medicine was one of those chemicals that maybe 5% of the time I'd get blotchiness on it. But otherwise, I'd get perfect color. And that happened largely by accident. Like one time I got just this really great color on a body where I didn't add any extra dye. And it was literally because I just wanted to use a half bottle that I had in the in the cupboard. I just wanted to get rid of it, so I just poured that in there. And the next day when I went in to take a peek at the previous night's lab bodies, I was like, well, damn, that looks pretty good. And I'm like, wonder what would happen if I just start doing that on all of them. Just start actually adding another, 8 ounces here or 4 ounces. Like try to find that happy medium. And that's when the revelation occurred. Like the rapture happened. Made all the sense in the world. Dude, I don't need to add dye. I just add more preservative. It's got the dye already in it. So let me double dip. If I had, I'm always working with crap bodies, right? 90 days dead, 45 days dead, that sort of stuff. If I was working on 48 hours, I don't know that I would be doing the stuff that I was doing in the lab. So I would absolutely adapt my practice based on what would happen. I would start, pre-education bias and then build into that. Because fresh bodies absolutely embalm differently than ones that have been sitting around for 45 days. 100%. But I still advocate that even on that, if you're not getting the color you want with your formulation on a fresh body, start adding it in maybe third or quarter bottle increments until you realize that you need to use that much going forward. Yeah, I like Power Tone. I liked everything you're listing. I like, man. I like and I used 100%. That's the stuff that I would make sure I always had a lot of in the supply closet, because that's the stuff that I would use to embalm. All right, folks. 8:08. We are past the quitting time. So, any last questions before we go ahead and send this one into eternity? And I will see you in the month of September. Seeing nothing, everyone, have a happy and safe Labor Day weekend. I will see you next live stream. Remember to like, share, subscribe, share this with a friend, invite a coworker, invite a fellow student to come and hang out. I will see you. God bless. Take care, everyone.